Three, two, one. All right, we're doing it. Another edition of Bid Nerd coming to you on the YouTube channel along with my partner Michael Deeb. My name is John Polnick. We're going to talk to you today about our top picks of the auctions that are coming out on Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer tomorrow. Or actually, maybe today in the morning. Yeah, if you're watching this, it's today. So that's this is something that we do daily. We have no idea what we're talking about, and you shouldn't take our advice at all. Michael Deeb, how you doing this morning?
Excellent. Good morning, my friend.
Very nice. Let's get right to the cars because when we jibber jabber, we wind up, well, we don't know what the hell we're doing. So
Behind schedule.
I'm gonna go right to the very first car today. What is this car? This is a
Clown
2000 Clown Shoe. It's a BMW Z3 M Coupe. And this particular car, yeah, it's looking good, right?
Yeah.
This particular car is a fairly famous Z3 M Coupe. This car belongs to Tyler Hoovey from Hoovey's Garage. He's pretty famous guy. If you're a big fan of the YouTubes and you watch a lot of automotive stuff, you're probably watching Doug DeMuro and you're probably watching Hoovey's Garage. This car is your chance to be close to those guys. I don't know how close you want to be to those guys, but my guess is there's some of Tyler Hoovey's DNA in this car. I don't know if that's a good
he
thing
probably farted in the seat.
Right? What do you know about this car, Michael Deeb?
Well, these cars were really, really cool. When BMW came out with the Z3, famously in the Bond movie, the world went nuts. You remember BMW was marking standard Z3s up like 40 grand when they were first launched. And of course, the real BMW nuts couldn't wait to see if BMW would and indeed build an M version of the car, which they have. And the coupe, with its rigidity, its polarizing shooting brake design, and a limited slip diff, this thing became a track weapon and a back road favorite. Very, very cool car.
It's true that I remember that whole BMW thing with James Bond. That was kind of fun. And the Z3 in general was kind of it was a parts bin car. They took parts from the E30 and the E36 BMWs and kind of put them together. The four-cylinder version of the Z3 was just a terrible car, but we don't need to talk about that. The Z3M Coupe, on the other hand, really was getting this car right. And the big thing about this car is that it came with the M3 engine, straight six. What is it? What is that? 3.2 liter.
Correct.
And this has the
240 horsepower.
Yeah, and this particular car, it's a 2000, so it's one of the early Z3M coupes, and it's not the earliest one. What was it, 98 when the coupes actually came out?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. But so the thing about the Z3M coupes is some of them came with the S52, which is the engine out of the
American
of the E36 M3. But the big deal was that in the next year you could get this car with the S54, which had 100 more horsepower.
Thanks to ITBs, individual throttle bodies. That was the big difference. We finally got the European spec motor, and that thing is a rocket.
Yeah, and that engine was the engine that was in the E46 M3. And the thing about having that powertrain in a smaller, more nimble, shorter wheelbase cars, I mean, the Z3 M coupes are just a ton of fun. I have a couple of friends that have owned these. I have never owned one. Have you ever owned? You've never owned one of these, have you?
No, I've never owned one. But you think of M3 as being a lightweight, focused car, an enthusiast car. Yeah. And this car is lighter still with a shorter wheelbase. I mean, these things were just hugely popular to the real driver, the real purist. And as a reflection of that, they still hold their value pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, this car's got a whole day left. It's got some miles on it, and it's at $23,000 sitting. So.
Yeah, I mean, okay, and it's getting some, it's got quite a few bids, a lot of comments, 30 bids already. I mean, and the fact that it's owned by kind of a famous owner, or call it infamous owner, if you will. That will probably bring. Yeah, it's definitely an influencer's car, and somebody's going to want to have a piece of that. Michael Deeb, what's your bid on
Well,
a
let's see.
2000.
This car's got reasonable miles. It's 84,000. We know that an enthusiast is the last owner. So if he said he had this car and kind of kept it a secret for about a year before he sort of unveiled it and now offering it for sale. So my guess is that the services and the maintenance and the tuning of this car up to. I don't think this is a $30,000 car, but it's certainly going to make a few more dollars between now and the close of auction. So I would go $28,000.
$28,000. Okay.
$29,000. Just under 30 grand, I would think, for this car.
I think that's a pretty good assessment. I'm going to say 26. I'm going to go just a little lighter on the car because it's not an S54 motor. But the thing is, I think stuff like this really is shooting up in value, and it wouldn't surprise me if it went over 30. I'm going to just be a little softer on it. I do love that it's black on black. I do love that it's a Z3 coupe in general. They did make Z3 coupes without an M.
Right.
Those do exist, and that would be kind of a fun car to have too and mess with. But this car, holy cow! So whoever gets this car is probably going to really enjoy it. Hopefully, they're going to get out and drive it, and hopefully, we'll see it in the scene.
Yeah, quick shout out to Hoobie for taking some cool photos. Love the graffiti background. Nicely done.
Very nice, right? All right. Well, what is the next car that we're going to talk about?
Ooh, we've got a really cool car. These are super rare. We're looking at a 1989 Volkswagen Jetta two-door coupe on Bring a Trailer that closes tomorrow. And so I think tomorrow, did we say tomorrow's the 8th of October?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, if you're watching this, it might be today, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So anyways, this car has quite a few modifications. So an enthusiast has taken probably his dream chassis and put in, I would say, a lot of the best parts you can find. This car features a 20-valve, 1.8 inline-4 turbocharged motor, that venerable motor that Audi and Volkswagen used to death at the beginning of the century. These motors, without having to open the motor, without having to split the case and rebuild the motor, just with tuning, you can take these from 180 horsepower all the way up to 350 horsepower with bolt-on modifications, and they are bulletproof. These motors were used in spec racing, in both like Volkswagen and Audi spec racing, and also in some open wheel series. They use these motors because they could go the whole season at 350 horsepower and never have to rebuild these motors. So they are damn near bulletproof. They're really good.
Well, that's a far cry from the engine that this car probably came with, which was
Right.
probably the 1.8 8 valve head with that maybe made 100 horsepower. It's probably like 96 or something like that. I really love that this car has period correct upgrades in the interior. Those Recaro sport seats from a GTI of the same era are probably the single most comfortable seats of all time.
Amen.
I have spent a lot of time on seats that look exactly like that. And these particular seats look like they've held up very well.
Or been refinished, but either way, they still look great.
Yeah. And then that's not a Momo Prototipo steering wheel. What was it? It was something.
What?
It's not. It's
Could have fooled me. It looks just like one.
That's what. Didn't the ad say it was something else?
It did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway. Oh yeah, a USA Monaco steering wheel, whatever the heck that is. But it has the What did you say? It had the tricolor BMW.
Yeah, that's
stitching?
the M stitching on that particular wheel, and he's got just the standard VW horn button. Assuming that this is a Prototipo knockoff, a Momo horn button should fit in there. And as you and I both know, these coupes were built at Wolfsburg plant for Volkswagen. It'd be really cool to see a Wolfsburg horn button on this steering wheel, a la Jason Camissa, our friend from Motor Trend and the internet.
Yeah, look at that engine. And then Mark IV GTI brakes to stop this car. The only thing I think I would have done as the builder, if I were building this car, would maybe be aesthetically. I think I would have maybe found some big bumpers from a 1990.
Yeah, very cool.
To kind of round out the front end. But you know what? I think that might just be because of my age. I think the younger crowd actually likes the diving board bumpers.
Right, it probably looks more it probably looks more European spec.
Yeah.
And being a fan of the GLI, I would love to see even a knockoff, some sort of mesh, sort of BBS style wheel on this car, especially lowered like it is. It'd be really, I think that would, for me, would complete the look. But this thing is cool. I bet this car drives great. I bet this car is making over 300 horsepower. That thing is a Wolfsburg in sheep's clothing. That's a fast car. I bet he surprises a lot of people on Saturday nights.
Right. All right, Michael Deep. So right now, the current bid is $5,000. What's your bid?
Well, so I approach this from a build standpoint. Try replicating this car with all the parts today for under 20 grand. I don't know that you could rebuild this car today for even $17,000-$18,000. There's a lot of stuff in there. That being said, you don't find a lot of this era Volkswagen on the major sources. These cars are always in enthusiast garage. They don't come up very often. So I'm surprised personally that this car is only at $5,000 with a day to go. I think there's got to be $14,000-$15,000 worth of value, and I'm not sure why it's not seen. So to me, 14 grand for this car, which probably sounds high, but you just simply couldn't replicate it, the performance of it for them. So I think that's where I'd like to see that car go, 14, 15 grand.
So you broke up a little bit on this side. It was 14. What's your bid? 14 what?
Yeah, 14,000.
14,000 is your bid. Okay. I agree with you that to build something like this is certainly, the sky's the limit. And that's the problem with building a car versus the benefit of buying a car that someone else spent the time and energy and brain power and blood, sweat, and tears to build. I think that's one of the, that's kind of a fun thing when it comes to being an enthusiast. You find that car that was built by the guy that knew what he was doing. Unfortunately for that guy, he's never in a million years going to get the money that he put into this car.
Right.
Not in a million years. This car is fantastic. I would love it. I would drive it. But I don't. My bid is 10,000. I think that there's just no way that this has no collector appeal because it's been so modded.
Right.
If it were an original two-door Jetta with the original engine and the original seats and super low miles, I bet one of those would bring $15,000. I mean, I just at the way classic unmolested cars are going these days, especially 80s and 90s eras cars, which is why Cars and Bids exists in the first place, and Bring a Trailer exists. That my bid's 10 grand. I mean, maybe it'll go a little over that, but I'd be shocked if it does.
All right.
Okay, so we will see about that. Let's see here. All right,
You and I have to start keeping score on these bids one of these days.
Well, that is the plan for this show is to go ahead and do just that. So we're going to go back to Cars and Bids for our next ride. I'm kind of stoked about this one.
Yep.
This is a 2011 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited Rubicon, right? So this is a vehicle that kind of changed the world, and it's funny because everybody knows the Wrangler. The Wrangler is as iconic as maybe a 911 or an M3, right? I mean, I think those are probably the three most iconic vehicles in the world. Maybe a Land Rover Defender or D90 or Series 2, whatever the heck you want to call them, might be as iconic. But that's the thing. You say something like a Defender D90 or D110, and they really have kind of the same profile as the Wrangler and the Jeep, and so there is some crossover there. And I think that this particular Wrangler is, it's got some mods on it. It looks like it's lifted. It's got some different fender flares. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Rubicon comes with a locker and Dana 44 axles. So it's a much more heavy-duty Wrangler than you would normally find from a base one. This vehicle you could take off the lot and go out and crawl with the best of them, and that is the appeal of the Wrangler. Again, when you come to Vegas for SEMA. And you go and you see those tens of thousands, or what am I talking about? Hundreds of thousands of people looking at millions of different aftermarket parts for different cars all over the world. For every car you can imagine, there's aftermarket parts, but they have an entire pavilion devoted just to the Jeep Wrangler for aftermarket parts, right?
Unreal.
And the thing is The Bronco has taken a little of the thunder from the Jeep because they're the first company that's finally said, "Oh, wow, we should make an SUV that doesn't look like an egg, and maybe it'll sell." Well, duh. Chrysler's been doing that for how many decades now?
Right.
And it shocks me when you look at the success of how much does a D90 on the used market go for? How much does
big bucks.
a used G wagon? I mean, a G wagon from 2003 is worth $30,000 with 150, 200,000 miles on it, and they kind of have that same
rear axle.
Yeah, and they have that same utilitarian look. People want this hard utilitarian look, and no manufacturer has been willing to do it, other than the Jeep Wrangler. And I think Broncos, they're going to sell a ton of Broncos in a minute, but I think the Wrangler is still going to be king here.
Yeah, this is arguably one of the most modified cars in American car culture, and what's nice when you leave the coastal cities like you and I have and find ourselves out in the desert on any given Saturday or Sunday, you'll find a train of 40 to 100 of these guys all getting together on a meetup to go out in the desert and crawl or bop around and have some fun. It's an entire culture, and it's really fun to see. My wife had one when I met her, and we wound up selling it with an automatic transmission and all-wheel drive, and we just simply couldn't believe how much money the car brought. They hold their value really well.
The other thing too is Cars and Bids claims to be a site for car enthusiasts, right? This is 80s, 90s, and modern enthusiast cars. I think my theory is that as we all get older and the younger generations, there's fewer and fewer people into cars as cars go autonomous. At some point, we're not going to be allowed to drive cars on the road. And I think that the last bastion of automotive enthusiasm will be off-road. It's going to be in the dirt.
Right.
The dirt's going to be the last place that you'll be able to get into a vehicle, turn it on, and drive it yourself.
That's not a bad prediction. That's a pretty good take.
So I think the Rubicon, I think Jeep Wranglers, I think the Broncos, G-Wagons, D90s, all that kind of stuff are here to stay and are only going to get more and more popular. And I mean, you look at this 2011 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, who right now the high bid is $14,000 and we're about a day away. But really, I mean, you go to any car lot in America, you can find something like this. And whether it's a 2007, which was the first year of the four-door, or a 2020, they're going to be somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 unless it's completely roached out. And even then, it's going to still be in the teens. I mean, this is not a vehicle that will ever be below $10,000. I mean, they just don't get that cheap.
No. That being said, this car is over 100,000 miles, which seems to be a threshold for some people. There's definitely no shortage of these in the market. And this car is tuned and modified. You can tell it sits higher. You'll notice the aftermarket wheels and tires at a glance. Anybody would spot that. They know this car is not stock. And I would say, for the most part, that turns people off. That pushes most buyers away. Most buyers, I think, would prefer a stock car. Now, if somebody falls in love with this particular color and tuning, they would pay for it. But I'm not sure that Cars and Bids has that much traffic that they're finding that particular buyer. So I'm going to go low on this car. I'd say this car is going to be $16,000, and that's it.
Okay.
I think there's other options out there for the money.
That all makes sense, but I think when you say that people want original cars, that's kind of putting on the normal car people hat. Or sports car people hat, or collector car people hat. When it comes to off-road vehicles, all that goes out the window. Off-road vehicles are one of those areas where people are looking for those accessories. They do want the bigger tires. They do want the bull bar on the front. They do want the wheel carrier on the back. They want to see that stuff because they know they're going to spend the money on it themselves. Everyone that gets a base Wrangler Rubicon is going to do some amount of this stuff, whether it's just bigger tires or if they can afford to do all the other stuff. So I don't think that Wrangler buyers are looking at a Wrangler going, I want it to be as close to stock as possible. And evidence to that is go on Craigslist right now, wherever you are, and go into the wheel section on Craigslist and write Wrangler, and what you're going to see is literally 200 ads for stock Wrangler wheels with the
Wow.
stock tires, right? Nobody that has a Wrangler keeps the stock wheels. Everybody put, or at the very least, they put bigger tires, unless they
Yeah.
get something like the Rubicon that already comes with the bigger tires. But all the 17-inch little wheels and tires, all that stuff just immediately sold immediately. The other thing too about cars and bids that I like is that people really seem to be appreciating the safari style vehicles like Cayennes and X5s that have been built up to be more
Yeah.
off-road. Full disclosure, I have a car coming out on Cars and Bids very soon that we'll be talking about that is right up that alley. My bid on this car, I do think that the miles hurts it. It's in Montana, so it's going to have to be brought down if somebody, most likely someone from California or one of the lower states, are probably going to buy this thing. I don't think your numbers are way off, but 16 is for a Rubicon not a chance. I think you're 22.
Wow, really? That much?
Yeah.
Huh?
Maybe.
Right.
I mean,
Interesting to see
20,
if
and
I
I
missed
think
it by that much.
22 is light. I think if this car were on Auto Trader or something like that, they'd be listing this thing at 29.
Wow.
Rubicons with stuff bring money.
Like I said, I was surprised at how much my wife's car brought when I went to sell it. I actually think I sold it over asking price because we listed it, earlier car. It wasn't a Rubicon. It was the shorter wheelbase and 130,000 miles, very beat up. It was used off the grid for several years.
Yeah.
I sold it for $1,500 more than we listed it for.
All right. Well, I think it's time to move on to our final car of the day. We're going to go back to Bring a Trailer, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about a car that I think you and I know quite a bit about because we're both Porsche nerds, and there it is. Michael Deeb, tell us about what this car is.
Oh, absolutely. This is like having dessert now. That we saved the best for last. What we're looking at is essentially the last year, although there were some 05s, last year of the 996 generation of the Porsche 911. Porsche made the 40th anniversary car, and this is a really cool car. It's a narrow-bodied chassis. It's not the S wide body or all-wheel drive chassis, but this car did benefit from the power kit, the X50 power kit, which brought horsepower up to 345, and it's a 6-speed manual with rear-wheel drive. It's got GT3 rocker panels. It's got ball polished, I believe, 18 or 19-inch wheels.
Those are 18-inch.
18
those are called
inch, yeah.
MYO2 wheels. Yeah.
18-inch wheels. Really cool stuff. Had special badging. These are numbered cars. They made 1,963, suggesting that 1963 was the first year that the 911 bowed. This particular car has 77,000 miles on it and looks to be in very good condition, except nowhere in the ad do they claim to have addressed the IMS bearing, which is very interesting. So if we take for face value that this car has 77,000 miles and never had the bearing change, are we to believe that this car has a good bearing or that it still could happen at any moment? That is the question I pose to you, my friend.
Well, obviously the intermediate shaft bearing is always an issue when it comes to any non-Metzger engine 996. So that means if you're talking about a GT3 or a turbo, then you don't have to worry about the IMS. All other 996s are plagued with that problem, and typically people like to say, oh, well, if they don't go within the first 30,000 miles, you're fine. If you get in higher miles, it's going to be okay. And the fact is, that's complete BS. They could go, and it is a ticking time bomb. Some of them will never go. Now, here's the thing. I've literally owned 5 996s, one of them being a turbo. All the other ones were M86 men engines, which is what this is, not a Metzger engine. And I've never had a IMS failure. And at least a couple of those cars were very high mile 996s without IMS upgrades. Like I had a C4S that was a 2004, and that car had 110,000 miles on it when I sold it. Original IMS, no cylinder score.
Wow.
Yeah, so they can be reliable. I think that that these IMS bearings blowing up and failing is blown way out of proportion, but it is a very real problem. We have talked about in the past. We have friends right here in our neighborhood that have had low mileage ones that have had IMS failures. I know people that have had upgraded the IMS with LN IMSs, and those have failed. But again, I really do think it's a rare thing. Here's another thing about this car, though. I mean, the 40th anniversary is extra special. You're right in the sense that it is the last 996 narrow body. In 2005, they did make the wide body car, so you could still get a 996 turbo or C4S in the wide body in 2005. But so 2004 was the last narrow body car. The 2004 and the 1999 996s are the only two 996s available with a limited slip differential. And this car has that. That's the 220 option code. And then the other cool thing about another, from an aesthetic point of view, about the anniversary cars, that it has the front nose of a turbo or a C4S, has those big gaping holes in the front, which is a big fun. And then the seats, the leather seats have kind of like this perforated thing that I really like.
And the steering wheel.
And the steering wheel, correct, yeah. Which I wish they would have done that again in maybe the 997s or something else, but I can't think of anything that has that.
But now when you look back, but what's cool now is it makes this car cool because it has these features.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean cool as in like, is this a cool thing or not? I meant like literally ventilated. They're not ventilated, whereas some of the newer Porsches have those kind of perforated seats, but that's because they also have ventilation. This one does not.
Yeah, it's cool. I would, it's very easy to look at this car and see that this is one of the best performing non-Metzger engine cars, from basically the tail end of the last century and the beginning of this century. It's a really neat car. 996s have been edging slowly in the right direction, moving up in value, and BAT has been the place to go to find one. There is typically a 40th anniversary almost every week at this point. This particular car is probably one of the higher mile examples to come on to Bring a Trailer in recent memory, and a lot of the lower mile cars have been easily into the $40,000 range. I think the miles will hurt this car because somebody who's been looking for one will probably notice this is one of the higher mile ones, but it should still remain a great value even if it's closer to 30,000 than 45. So cement value here for the.
I think, we talk about miles a lot when it comes to 996s and stuff, and I still, whenever anybody asks me, hey, I want to get a first Porsche or I want to get a 996, I'm looking for, I found this really low mile 996, and I always say, hey, was the car driven when the car was under warranty? When this car was brand new, did it make it to 40 or 50,000 miles while it was still under warranty? If the answer is no, then I typically say, you know what? Pass, unless you wanted a collector car. If you're looking for a low mileage car that you want to look at and occasionally drive, then get the lower mileage car. It might be worth more and everything like that. But I think this car sits in a sweet spot. 70-something thousand miles means that all the normal things that go wrong with these cars, camshaft seals, rear main seals, all these little seals, all these things that just typically go and were usually paid for and fixed by Porsche as a manufacturer when the car was under warranty. If you get a car that has low miles and those problems didn't come up, then that's your problem when you own the car, and you're going to have to pay for it. But by the time the car gets to 70,000 miles, the only thing you're really going to have to worry about at this point, you're going to have an alternator go at some point. You might have coil packs. You might have a water pump. But all that kind of stuff is
refresh the AC.
Car maintenance stuff, If you get lucky and you get one that's solid and it doesn't have an IMS issue, like I said, I've owned these cars well over 100,000 miles with no problems. And I think that I'd be super happy with a 70,000 mile anniversary car, and I would drive the living daylights out of it. I would track it. I would drive it like I stole it.
It's amazing because this car doesn't reflect the modern 911s, but yet it doesn't. It's not iconic like the old G-body cars. This car does sit in an unusual era, and the 996 seem to wear this scarlet letter because of the IMS. But I'm telling you, people, if you haven't driven one of these cars and really driven it, you'll be surprised at the performance. It's got like 4-piston Brembo brakes and a 6-speed manual. This car goes, turns, and stops as well as anything.
Got to get rid of that chrome on those the polished MYO2s. Got to do something about that. This car does have a history of coming from Florida and Ohio, and I think Colorado. So this car was driven in places where there's a lot of corrosion. And a lot of salt and a lot of moisture. And I don't know how long it was in Florida, but I definitely don't like Florida cars. So I think those factors are going to definitely hurt. The car is physically in Ohio. So if you're going to buy this car, get it now and get it wherever you want it to go before it snows. Michael Deeb, the current bid on this car is $21,000. At the time of recording this, we are a day away. What's your bid?
So I think that's a reflection of where this car has been and the fact that the bearing hasn't been done. So considering those things and the miles, I'm guessing that this car only makes 28 or 29 on the bid. And I'm also guessing that doesn't hit the reserve and that this owner's looking for 35 and he's not going to get it. And I think that's reflected that the car is still at only $21,000. So I'm going to go $28,000, and I'm also just going to throw in there that I don't think it sells at that. I think that the owner's looking for more, but I don't know. I don't think this one is going to trip at that price.
Yeah, that's interesting insight in the idea in talking about the reserve. I'm glad you brought that up because, the reserve probably is significantly higher. I'm with you. I don't think it gets above 30. I'm going to say it gets bid up to 26 because people are going to be scared of the miles, even though I think that's a benefit personally. 996s have surprised the living daylights out of me. The prices that some of them are going. So I bid at 26 probably because I think that's what it's actually worth. If it went up to 35, I'd be like, okay. I mean, I guess that's where we're at.
40th anniversaries have been regularly breaching 40,000 on Bring a Trailer with just a little bit fewer miles. And it's been nice to see that even today, some of those owners are offering those cars with the original luggage that these things came with as part of this package. So it's neat to see that a few pieces of luggage are coming with the cars, and those cars are reaching 40 grand. I think it'll be one of the most highly collectible 996s, short of turbos and GT3s.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And all right, well, good. I think we've talked about our top 4 picks of the day for Bring a Trailer and Cars and Bids. My name is John Polnick. You can find me on Porsche Road Trip on Chassis TV. That's available on the Pluto Network. You can also find some of my films at derfascination.com, also the Derfascination YouTube channel. And you can also watch our show, The Rami Show, regularly at The Rami Show on the YouTube channel. Michael Deeb over there, what do you want to say before we close her up?
I just want to thank you for a great week. We're off to a good start, and we'll see you tomorrow.
I hope that people watching this are going, you know what, God, these guys really are stupid, but it's kind of fun to watch stupid. I mean, they just don't know what they're talking about, but, the thing is, here's what we want from this channel. We want you to watch the auctions like we do all day while you're doing whatever productive thing that you're doing. Turn us on in the background and just, laugh at our just total ignorance. And then go in the comment section and tell us about the cars that you want us to talk about. Is there something that we missed? What's your favorite car? What's a car that's coming up? Do you have a car that you're actually going to sell on one of these auction sites? Let's hear about it. We're going to try to do more of these as we progress, and we're also going to go back and give ourselves the credits and we're going to have to bust our own chops because I'm sure we're going to be wrong about every single one of our predictions. So
we'll start keeping score.
Yeah. As we progress here next week, we'll probably be going back and talking about how wrong we got it on previous cars. And then we're also going to do a weekly top 10. We're going to do that every Sunday. So if you really want a preview of what's coming up for the week, tune in to Car Nerd on the YouTube interweb channel things.
Bid Nerd.
Bid Nerd.
Yeah.
I don't even know the name of my own channel. Bid Nerd. It's Bid Nerd. Bid Nerds, something like that. If you're here, you already know what it is. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.